Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of The Kevin Moore Show, which is sponsored by my website, channeling.com. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Paul O'Brien. Now Paul is a visionary entrepreneur who invented a new category of software in 1989 that evolved to become the world's largest astrology and divination website. Now he sold the company in 2007 and authored 3 books. Now Paul is a sought-after speaker, philanthropist, and founder of the educational Divination Foundation. Paul O'Brien, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Kevin.
Paul, this is going to be an interesting interview. I have many different guests on, as you know, and yours has caught your book image caught my attention first. You know, when they send the books over to us for Authors Up One interview, and I was like, that looks like an interesting kind of book. And I appreciate you bearing with us to have to move this interview as well. Now, this is based on your latest book, and how many previous books have you done?
This is my 3rd book.
3rd book. Okay, so this is available on Amazon. We're going to put the link in the show more description of this video below. And of course, we'll put your website on the screen. Your website is?
www.divination.com.
Okay, so your book is titled Intuitive Intelligence, Make Life-Changing Decisions with Perfect Timing. Now, before we get into the how, what, why, and when, just give us what this is about in a few minutes, like an elevator pitch. Get straight to the point.
Well, it's a book that's part memoir, it's part how-to, and it's part philosophy, and it basically tells the story of a man who left money for meaning, and then the money came anyway, and it was on the basis of his intuition that he made life-changing decisions that created a whole new industry and livelihood for himself. So it's basically a book on how to access intuitive intelligence when you need it the most, which is when it's the hardest to get. Kind of like when you want a loan from the bank, that's when you can't get one. It's when you don't need one, they're all over you. So intuition is kind of like that. It's hard to get when you need it the most. When do you need it the most? Well, you're stressed out. You've got some big decision to make. There's fear, or there's craving, or there's strong emotions in play, and so they get in the way. And we can discuss that in our conversation.
Yeah, we've got loads to discuss, and I want to let you kind of talk as well. I've got a lot of points that I'd like to sort of talk about in this short amount of time that we've got, even though 51 minutes, hey, it seems like a long time, doesn't it? But it can soon go in these sort of long-form conversations. So, okay, and also, what would you say, you probably said it there, but what would you say as well is the most important message of your work?
I'd say the most important message of my work is that it's a good idea to take the risks that grow you. And these are the risks that have to do with what is naturally fascinating to you, or what your natural interests are. So there's a whole sequence that's involved in manifesting your true self and manifesting your biggest dreams. And it all starts with self-knowledge, and it all resolves with decision-making and great timing. So this is where intuition comes in, and I encourage people to take risks, but not take risks for the wrong reasons. Take the risks that grow you, that are an extension of who you really are.
Right, okay, absolutely. So let's just very quickly go into your journey as well. So your sort of fascination, your sort of drive in a sense was kind of going back to software, computer software, programming in a sense. Yeah. Just take us from that space where you were.
Well,
and also...
Yeah,
go ahead.
I divide life into 3 stages, and stage 1 is the student stage, and that's where we learn who we are, what we're good at, and what we love to do. And this stage lasts until all through your 20s, through your teens and 20s. And the way to discover who you are and what you're good at and what you love to do is to try things, to experiment. Now, in my case, I fell in love with this thing called the I Ching when I was 19 years old. Or some people pronounce it I Ching, and in Chinese it means the Book of Changes. It's the oldest book in the world, but it's more than a book. It's a divination system, and that's a way to stimulate your intuition. It's kind of like the tarot cards of China. And I was introduced to that when I was an undergraduate at UC Berkeley, and I found it fascinating because no matter what I threw at it, it reflected it back to me. The first reading I ever did, it was this cute girl. She's showing me this system. I was very interested in her, and I was willing to play along with it, but I was really kind of making fun of it. And so it completely ignored my question, and it came back with hexagram number 4, which is entitled Youthful Folly. And it speaks about the student who lacks respect for the teacher. And I thought, wait a minute, let me try this again. And so I tried it again. This time I was testing it, and it came back with text that said, questioning the sincerity of the seeker. It was testing me. So I made fun of it. It made fun of me. I tested it. It tested me. I thought, wow, something's going on here. And that's when I became fascinated with the I Ching, which is the oldest book in the world. And then a few years later, I became fascinated with software when I was playing a game on this gigantic computer. This was in the early 70s. Computers would take up a whole room, and they'd have a gigantic mag tape, and we had a tiny little terminal, and we played this game, Space War, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. Somebody wrote some code that delivered an immersive experience. That's kind of like a form of wizardry, and I was fascinated by that. So I got into the software industry through the side door. I became a secretary for that same computer center because I could type. I was a college dropout at that point. And 15 years later, I had elevated myself, and I was the vice president of marketing for a high-tech company. And I found myself at the same time using the I Ching quite a bit because it was so dysfunctional at work. The office politics were brutal. And one day I had a light bulb went off, which was the intersection between the I Ching and software, two of my fascinations from my youth. And I thought, I sure wish I could do this on my Macintosh. This was in the late 80s. The Macintosh was the only graphical computer that was in the business desktops because of desktop publishing and that kind of thing. And that was an inspiration that was born of two things that fascinated me during stage one. And that's what propelled me to become an entrepreneur. I took my life savings and I created the world's first divination software, which was an I Ching program that I called Synchronicity. And I got to tell you, Kevin, it was the dumbest business idea ever. They would have eaten me alive on Shark Tank. It was like all of my peers thought I was crazy, and I wasn't sure they were wrong because there was no market for I Ching software in 1989. But I loved it, and I spent my entire life savings creating a prototype. And 18 years later, after going 13 years without being able to pay myself half the time and having to work 2 jobs in a moonlighting mode to keep things together, I had developed what became the world's largest astrology website, which I ended up selling because we were pursued. I didn't have an exit strategy. I never expected it to be worth a lot of money, but I ended up selling it for tens of millions of dollars. And it's just an incredible story because I left money for meaning. I left a high-paying executive position because I wanted to do something more meaningful, and then the money came anyway.
Well, and what was that website you had?
The flagship was tarot.com. So it was do-it-yourself tarot card readings. I added tarot cards after I did the I Ching CD-ROM in the mid-90s, and then I met a tarot reader, or actually, she's a tarot scholar, and I worked with her to develop. She said, why don't we do a tarot one? And I realized that tarot cards are the same thing. You got a set of archetypes, and you've got the synchronicity principle, which I describe in my book, Intuitive Intelligence, Archetypes and Synchronicity, and how we can use these things to make better decisions. And so I made that CD-ROM with her, and then I created a website version of both of them, and I had the domain name tarot.com, and I had the domain name iching.com, and I started providing those features for AOL and Yahoo, and then I made a bid for the astrology franchise for AOL and Yahoo, and I added horoscopes and all of these astrology reports. And that's how I got the franchise, and that's how we became the world's largest astrology website. But we stuck to the domain name tarot.com because it was easy to remember. But the AOL horoscopes was an awesome.
Yeah. Wow. What did it do for you to have become a multimillionaire sort of after all that struggle that you went through than for you to finally have a checkbook and an account where you can just, pay for stuff and do what you wanted to do. What did you do with that money, in a sense,
Well,
to change your life?
I had become an entrepreneur because I had a dream, what I called creative freedom, but it had a very modest definition at the time. The definition was to be able to make a living doing something that was meaningful to me, and to not have to take orders from engineers and high-tech executives, etc. So I never imagined that I was going to have the creative freedom that became possible after I sold the company. I never imagined paying off my mortgage. So after I sold the company and I came into millions of dollars, I had enormous creative freedom, and it was very invigorating. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I had made this decision before I sold the company. I created a nonprofit, which I still run. It's called the Divination Foundation. And I had a radio show, and I still have it. And I thought, well, I'm going to syndicate the radio show more broadly and make a podcast out of it, which we've done. And I had these books in me that I wanted to write, which I've done. And I wanted to do a lot of traveling. So I had the wherewithal, and I also wanted to become a bit of a philanthropist and to give back. So I really wanted to set up my life so that I could have the ultimate in creative freedom, no budgets, no deadlines, and be able to give back for the rest of my life. But I'll tell you, there's a shadow side too. You come into sudden wealth, and everybody wants a piece of you. And you're constantly hit on by nonprofits and politicians and gold diggers of all stripes, and all of a sudden everybody wants to be your friend, and for the wrong reasons. And so that creates a lot of confusion, particularly for somebody like me. I come from a middle class background. Nobody ever gave me a nickel in my life, and I worked my way through school until I dropped out. So it was very jarring, and it's taken me 10 years to sort of adjust to it. And to realize, okay, I've got these resources and I've got to steward them responsibly, and I have to be careful about people objectifying me and hitting on me or seducing me or what have you.
Money doesn't buy happiness, does it? It doesn't buy happiness, but it does give you options, though. Do the options make you as intensely happy as not having the options, or the dream of the options? I mean, once you can fulfill that which you want to do, which you probably have, it's hard to think about it, because when you don't have it, it's like, and especially when you want to do something good in the world,
Right.
And you've got an idea of wanting to give back on a big scale where it's more than you, and you don't really care. You care about yourself, you want to weight train, look after yourself, do good things, but you're not really interested in the big homes and that. Maybe a nice car, maybe that would be nice, but you really want to do something, and sometimes you can't do that which you want to do. And even if you had the money at the time to do it, it still wouldn't be right, would it? Because you talk about in your book, it's about timing.
Right. That's so true. Like the Beatles said, like your countrymen, the Beatles said, "Can't buy me love." And in fact, money complicates the hell out of it in terms of dating and love. And if there's a disparity of wealth, it's very difficult for that not to be an issue in a relationship. On the other hand, if you have a lot of wealth, you don't really, you're not lifestyle compatible with somebody who's got a full-time career and they're cultivating a following, or they're cultivating a clientele, and they're kind of tied, they're married to their business. And I know what that's like. I was married to my...
You did it. Yeah, you did it.
Yeah, I was married to my work for 20 years, so I have a lot of empathy for that and a lot of compassion for that. So, you can say to somebody, well, honey, I'm going to take care of you, but they don't want to be dependent on you, and I don't blame them. So it's really kind of a tricky thing.
Do you think you found your next calling in life? Do you think you found your next aha moment? Are you still looking for it, even with all that money?
Well, studies have shown that after you get about $80,000 a year, people who make more than that are not commensurately happier. If you don't have enough, money is really, really important to your level of happiness.
But my point is for you. Have you found that next project, or did you think you have found it, or are you still looking for it? Are you looking for something? What are you looking for in your life right now that would really fulfill you? Are you fulfilled?
I'm looking for, I want to have a partner. I want to have intimacy. I want to have more intimacy, more community. So I'm working on that, and I'm spending time. I've got like a half-time job. I'm producing my radio show and my blog. It's about a half-time. It's a weekly show, so it's about a half-time job, and that's about right. I've got the level of productivity and leisure that I want in my life. So I'd really like to have a partner, a traveling companion, and develop an intimate partnership. That's really important to me. And really, you can't make that happen. It's like I have these wonderful skills about channeling my intuition in order to visualize products that never existed and to invent things and find an intersection between things. And I did that. I was a product visionary. I could imagine what it was like to do a tarot card reading with your mouse and to pick your own cards, and I wanted it to be authentic. Same thing with the I Ching, casting the coins. How can you do that with a mouse that's real, that's authentic? It's not a random number generator. So I was very good at visualizing that and imagining what that would feel like and kind of feeling into it and writing behind it and putting the right messaging so that it could appeal to people. I was very good at using my imagination to envision things and then manifest things. But you can't do that in the realm of relationships because you're dealing with people.
Well, obviously then, you obviously have been on your spiritual quest for a while. You obviously have come to the understanding, I'm guessing, without putting words in your mouth, that this is part of your life journey, that this is part of your experience here on earth to go through what you're going through.
Right, exactly. And so I would say that the spiritual journey really motivates me, coming to a place of contentment and a place of serenity. But money can't buy you that either. The world is a crazy place right now. And so I think the only answer to the pursuit of happiness is to focus on meaning instead of happiness. Happiness, to me, the pursuit of happiness is kind of a trap. And it can actually make you more unhappy by pursuing it avidly.
What is meaning to you, though? Okay, so forget the happiness. So what is meaning is, and tell me if I'm right, meaning is what drives you, what turns you on.
Yeah, it's what's significant to you. It's what derives from your values. It's what, it's what you find meaning in. It's so funny. I was telling a friend of mine, I was saying the pursuit of happiness is a dead end. Meaning is, and he goes, well, what does that mean? And I said, well, it means whatever. It's an extension of your values. So in other words, living according to your values, to your highest values, that's what's meaningful.
Yeah. And not to give two fucks on anybody else that judges you. Excuse my French. I'm from England. Not to care about when people judge you. Just as long as you're not doing something that's hurting others or yourself, as long as it's a positive force for promoting something good or doing something good, or entertaining people, whatever it may be, right? As long as it's a positive thing, right?
Right.
All right. Okay. I know we're getting a bit away from your book here, but I guess it's all kind of connected. It's just fascinating to have someone like yourself who's gone through what you've gone through, and to, not pick their brain about this stuff is kind of like, you've done all the shows about your book and everything, and it's like, well, okay, then let me ask you this: what has your book done for you so far? What has this journey done for you writing this book?
Well, the book has helped me clarify a lot of the things that I've learned, and it's been very good exercise for me to write the book. I've gotten a lot of benefit from just the act of writing it down and collecting my thoughts, and sometimes I reread parts of it and I recall parts of it, and I realize, wow, so I've got this whole system in here on how to make decisions, and we go through life and we're faced with decisions. It doesn't matter how much money you have. We're faced with strategic decisions that are the most important thing that we do. I like to say that decision making is the highest leverage human activity. It's more, our success and happiness in life is more related to the quality of the decisions we make than any other factor. And you'd think, as the only species that can visualize different possible outcomes to different choices we might make, we'd be really good at this by now. But au contraire, we suck. We are either too emotional and impulsive, or we're too over-rational and procrastinating. So we're not very good at making decisions, and so that's an ongoing challenge for everybody. And as you cultivate your intuitive intelligence, you get better and you get incrementally better at it, and
Yes.
and it's easier to do.
Now, obviously, this is not enough time, and it's such a shame. But I could speak to you for a lot longer. Let's get into your book then. Let's get into your book. So, now, you're always someone that's gone against the grain, obviously, right? And you're not going with decisions based on logic all the time, right? Let's go for this direction. How do you define success, making the right decision without the sort of ego there as well?
Well, I think people have to define success for themselves, and success has to derive from you being authentically in sync with who you are, and the route towards achieving that success is making the right moves at the right time. So, what is success for you? That's a decision right there, and that's a decision based on self-knowledge. So, I've got a whole section of the book on self-discovery and defining success for yourself. That's a challenge. And it all derives from the who am I question, the self-discovery question of stage 1 that I was talking about. Yeah. So then stage 2 is the builder-provider stage, and that's where you choose some skill that you discovered in stage 1, and you make a commitment. And you make a commitment to building something and providing for at least for yourself, if not for others. And then stage 3, which I'm in now, is the patron, sponsor, mentor, teacher stage, and that's the giving back stage. So in every one of those stages, you've got decisions to make, and you're going to have more happiness and success and peace of mind and serenity to the extent that you make better decisions. And the big decisions, the life-changing decisions, are the hardest ones to make, and they're the ones that are driven by intuition. But logic plays a role too. And I have a whole chapter on how to use logic to answer the what question. Now, the what question is, for every strategic vision, there's a what and a when. And the what question is, what is the best next move, or what is a good next move I could make? And then the when question is, and when should I make it? That's the timing question. Well, the what question, you can use logic, and I've got a whole system in the book of I call it the weighted pros system. It's much better than pros and cons in terms of sorting out the whole array of options that you might have and using logic, to handle them. It's sort of like I define divination. I've got a chapter on divination, which is a great way to stimulate your intuition. In fact, I define divination, which is tarot cards or I Ching, as a way to stimulate your intuition to think outside the box around problems that logic can't handle. But logic can handle a lot of stuff. And I think logic's a great tool. So when people ask me some question or they tell me describe some red flag that they're noticing in a relationship or something, I tell them, you don't need to get a tarot card reading. This is so easy. This is logic will tell you the answer to that. But if you're making a strategic question and the timing issue is important, and timing is everything, as they say, that's going to require intuition. That's 100% intuitive. The timing question. So if you cultivate your intuitive intelligence, your timing is automatically going to get better.
So obviously we're talking about the inner sense, your intuition. Now, I'm guessing, obviously with your background, you'd be okay about saying that's the sort of the collective unconsciousness side of things, or the infinite intelligence that resides in all of us. That when we check into that intuition, that feeling, is that the side that's is where all answers lie? Do all answers lie within?
Well, the collective unconscious is something that we all partake of. That's what Carl Jung called it. I call it infinite intelligence, and I think of the intuition as a little antenna that can download information from infinite intelligence. So you could say it's inside of you, or it's inside of all of us. It's kind of like a cross-cultural thing. There's mythology, there's archetypes, and there's synchronicities. And so the intuition is this finely calibrated antenna that's looking for very subtle things like synchronicities in order to notice them, but not only to notice them, to derive the meaning from reading between the lines. It's the same thing with an I Ching reading. If you do an I Ching reading, it isn't so much the exact words that you get. If you read between the lines and decipher the meaning. Same thing with a tarot card reading. There's an archetype, and that archetype gives you, it stimulates different thoughts and different ideas. Well, all that stuff's coming out of the collective unconscious or the infinite intelligence. So that's why I say resourcefulness is being able to tap into this reservoir of infinite creativity that's there for all of us. Now, I remember when I became an entrepreneur, people would say, "Do you have a backer?" And I would just smile and I'd say, "Yes, my backer has infinite resources." So that's what I was thinking, because I didn't have any financial backers. But we all can tap into infinite intelligence once we cultivate our intuitive intelligence, that little antenna.
Yeah, and do you think with the tarot card self readings that you did, do you think if it had been anything else, it just wouldn't have been as popular? Do you think there was something about? Obviously, you tapped into some sort of business there idea that was very popular, right? But then again, you were doing the whole astrology readings with all the other websites as well, weren't you? There's a lot more than just the sort of, giving yourself, your own tarot readings. There was a much bigger picture that your company was.
Oh yeah, well it started out with just the I Ching, and then you give yourself an I Ching reading using the software, and eventually onto the site. Then I added tarot, because I knew it was the same thing. It's a set of archetypes and the synchronicity principle. The synchronicity principle says whatever card turns up, that's pointing to an archetype. That archetype is inside of you, so it's basically carrying a message to you that's already a part of yourself. So it's kind of highlighting a part of yourself. And then I added astrology to that. And yeah, all this stuff was very popular. And in fact, when I sold the company, we had 10 million registered members of our website. So I started it in my basement, and it just grew, and it was very stressful to keep up with it, because when you're providing horoscopes for AOL, you're not allowed to have any downtime. You got to have 99.5% uptime, and they open the spigot on New Year's Eve, and everybody wants their New Year's horoscope or their New Year's numerology reading or whatever. Oh, it's just unbelievable.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, so now an interesting thing that you talk about as well. Well, I want to mention this law that you've got. You've got the OBriens Law, right? The OBriens Law. So just tell us about that law, because I find that fascinating.
Well, I jokingly refer to it as O'Brien's Law because it's so counterintuitive, and people are surprised when they hear this, but I maintain, and in fact, I know it's true. The stronger the feeling, this is about decision making. And I say the stronger the feeling, the less trustworthy it is as a basis for making a decision. Now, most people think, well, I'm going to trust my strongest feelings. And I'm saying, no, those feelings are coming from your ego. Those are ego-driven. It's either fear or it's addiction or craving. It's something, the strong feeling or jealousy or whatever it is, the strong feelings are ego-driven. The intuition never appears as a strong feeling, or hardly ever appears as a strong feeling. It's subtle. It's a soft, quiet voice, or it's a small, subtle gut feeling. It's not this overpowering. Anytime that you have this overpowering feeling to do something that you're driven to do, I would be suspicious of where that's coming from. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Strong feelings have messages for us, and they're strong for a reason, but it's not a good basis for making a decision. And people have made horrible decisions by trusting their feelings. The old expression, you can trust your feelings. Well, that's true in certain contexts, but in terms of strategic decision making, you can't trust strong feelings, and I call that O'Brien's Law.
What do you trust in those cases then? You'll trust logic?
Well, no. Yeah, you can trust logic to a point, but logic can't handle so many important areas of life. Like, logic's not very good in the realm of relationships. It's no good in the realm of timing. It's not very good. It's not completely good in the area of negotiating strategies. These things have a lot of nuance. They have a lot of subtle aspects to them that logic can't handle. So logic can handle things that are measurable. Logic can handle things that are kind of black and white. There's a lot of things logic can handle. Logic's very good at taking things apart and putting them back together in novel ways. And then we've invented amazing technologies and medicines, etc., from doing that. But it's not any good at answering questions that the ancient sages were trying to answer, which is, how do things want to go together in time? What's the right time to have this ritual? What's the right time to launch that campaign? What's the right time to bring up this sensitive subject with my sweetheart or my teenage child? You know, these are timing questions that logic can't handle. So, no, I'm saying that you need to trust your intuition, and you need to access your intuition. And it's very difficult to access your intuition when you're having strong feelings. And usually people go with the strong feelings. And really what you have to do is you have to create some space. And this is what the whole second part of the book is about. I call it visionary decision making. It really is a kind of a receptive thing more than an aggressive thing. You can't force intuition to happen when you need it. You can't. There's no formula for it. You have to get the noise out of the way. I like that. If you think of your hand, and I think of the palm of the hand as my mind, and the 5 fingers are the 5 senses. And they're like big antenna. And there's visual and auditory and kinesthetic. And then imagine there's this tiny little 6th finger over here. That's the intuition, and it's really small, and it's calibrated to a very quiet signal. Well, you got all this noise going on inside the mind to begin with, all the chattering that's constantly happening, the self-talk, etc. And then you've got the 5 senses that are streaming. We're being bombarded all the time, especially now, with all of the inputs that we get from the internet and from media. And there's so much noise in the system that it's like you can't hear. The intuitive signal is drowned out. It's sort of like, you know, the old days of a ham radio, and you're trying to tune in Bora Bora, and it's a very faint signal. There's all this static and noise on the line. That's our life. That's our daily life of our mind, the monkey mind. And so it's very difficult to access your intuition. So I've got exercises in the book that help you quiet down, calm down, and create some space and meditate on it. And don't be in such a hurry. Slow down and find a way to hear that small, soft, quiet voice, to let that antenna receive that fine signal. And it involves mindfulness and meditation type practices, but you can also use divination, and I've got a whole chapter in the book on that. I've got a whole chapter on how to use the I Ching, and how to invoke archetypes when you need them. Like, for instance, every tarot card is an archetype. That's 78 archetypes. But there's certain foundational archetypes that we can channel anytime that we need them. There's the sovereign, which is the king or the queen. And the sovereign's job is to manage the kingdom, is to take care of his or her people and to maintain order in the kingdom. You've got the warrior. Well, the warrior's job is to defend the boundaries. It's not a gender thing. The mama grizzly is one of the most fierce warriors there is. You've got the magician. That's the creative part. And you've got the lover. That's the part that wants to merge. And then there's many, many others. But we can channel these archetypes. And in fact, that's what you're doing when you get a tarot card reading or divination. It's a set of archetypes. And you channel them, but you don't actually call on them deliberately or intentionally. You use some method to create a meaningful coincidence, which is how Carl Jung defined synchronicity. So what's a meaningful coincidence? Well, you shuffle the cards and you lay out the cards. The cards that turn up when you're focused on some issue or dilemma or question or problem, those cards are turning up coincidentally. I've got a chapter in the book on how to channel archetypes, how to deliberately call upon the archetypes that might be helpful in terms of empowering you to manifest your heart's desire. So like every card in the tarot deck is an archetype. There's 78 archetypes in that set. In the I Ching, you've got 64 chapters. There's 64 archetypes in that set. And there's been studies, Jungian psychologists have named what they call the foundational archetypes. James Hillman is a well-known Jungian. He called out the sovereign, the magician, the warrior, and the lover. Well, the sovereign, that's the king or the queen. They're maintaining order in the kingdom, and they're taking care of their people, and they're taking care of business. There's the warrior. That's the defender of the boundaries. That could be a lawyer, or that could be a mama grizzly. And then there's the magician. That's the creative type that invents things and that, pulls new ideas out of thin air and puts together new intersections and invents things. And then there's the lover, which is all about union and about, heart connections. And so we can learn how to deliberately channel these archetypes. There's a chapter in the book about that. Or we can use them in the form of the divination systems, which I mentioned earlier, in the sense that we let the synchronicity principle operate upon this set of archetypes. And so the way the coins land, that's a synchronicity. It's a synchronicity between what's on your mind, what you're focused on, and the way the coins land at that time. So that's a coincidence. And Carl Jung studied the I Ching and came up with the word synchronicity to define that. He calls it a meaningful coincidence. How do you get the meaning? That's where your intuition comes in. And you read between the lines and you look at that archetype and you figure out, well, what does that archetype mean in terms of the question that I posed or the issue that I'm presenting it with? Same thing with tarot cards. All of the archetypes are inside of us. And so the tarot card that comes up has got a message for you. And it came up at the time when you were focused on whatever issue or dilemma that you presented. That's a synchronicity. That's a coincidence. It's a coincidence that that card came up. And it's a meaningful coincidence, and you use your intuition to decipher what the meaning is. So it's very useful to work with archetypes either deliberately or sometimes they appear in our dreams. And in fact, that's what does appear in our dreams, is symbols and archetypes or people that we knew before, and they symbolize something. The people that appear in our dreams, the dream's never about them. They're symbolizing something for us. So there's kind of an archetypal meaning to what they're representing. So these are various things that we can do in order to activate the intuition and in order to give it material in order to download from infinite intelligence so that we can make better decisions and make the right moves at the right time. And that's the whole secret of manifesting anything that you want, is to make the right moves at the right time.
Right, absolutely. Your book towards the end, or halfway through it really, is a sort of how-to, right? You talk about, as you've just said there, the visionary decision-making process, which is sort of, activating intuition when we need it as well. We've touched upon sort of a little bit about, your heartfelt desires, but also we need to be able to manifest those heartfelt desires as well, don't we? And that's important to do that. Now, some of us watching this will say, well, we've got the sort of day job and, it's not really my heartfelt desire, do you know what I mean, to be doing that. But we all need that day job sometimes, don't we? We need to sort of, understand that that's just the place that we're at right now, and that besides the day job, we also have other time on our hand when we can do these more heartfelt or heart desires that we're looking at in this conversation.
Yeah, well, when I talk about heartfelt desires, just because my book uses the example of somebody who created a business success, that's kind of secondary. Really, the heartfelt desire could be in the realm of relationships, it could be in the realm of art, it could be in the realm of parenting, it could be in any realm. It's just something that's coming from the heart rather than the ego. It's like when I started my business to do divination software, that was a heartfelt thing because there was no money in it. Nobody could expect that there would ever be any money in it. The fact that it turned out that way for me is like a total fluke. It's a kind of a total miracle. And when you talk about day jobs, I really want to emphasize that your day job is a really important thing, and it's a very positive thing. In fact, I would say everybody has a day job. My day job now involves paying my taxes. It involves managing people to some extent. It involves making investment decisions. So that's on the money-making side of life. And as long as you're in Britney Spears, she's got 5 managers and she's got to manage her managers. And, you think, well, she's got creative freedom. All she does is write songs and sing songs and perform, which she loves to do. And there's this kind of mythology that, you really shouldn't do anything unless it's what you love to do. And I don't agree with that at all. I think that's naive. I think everybody's got a day job. There's aspects to life that are just work, and it's not fun, but it's part of being responsible and it's part of taking care of business. And as long as it's not harming anybody, like you said earlier, that's what the definition of right livelihood is. It's how to make a living without causing harm. It's not about doing what you love. I don't think very many people have a chance to make a living strictly doing what they love. In fact, so many artists die poor and they never become famous until after they die. So I think we need to appreciate having a day job or having some way to provide for ourselves at the same time that we have this creative life. So I want to encourage people to have a creative life and to manifest their heartfelt desires. And it doesn't have to do with money, and it doesn't have to do with business necessarily.
And 2 things that you're passionate about is creativity and resourcefulness as well.
Yeah, I would say when I talk to entrepreneurial groups, I say the 3 things that you need in order to be successful is you need to have determination, which is, never say die. And you need to have resources or resourcefulness. If you don't have financial resources, then you've got to be extra scrappy. Or else you've got to work really long out. You got to have a lot of energy. And then the third thing is serendipity or good timing. So these are really, really valuable things for any enterprise or any objective that you want to manifest in life.
And how do you find, for those maybe entrepreneurs watching this as well, how do you find resourcefulness? And this is a question for myself as well, but how do you find resourcefulness when really, as you've been through yourself, there isn't much funds around sometimes when you're doing your thing, and you need more resources to make things work. But I mean, yeah, without giving up, I suppose, do you just go with the energy and go with the universe?
Well, you've got to put one foot in front of the other, and you've got to work your ass off. I mean, there's no shortcut to. I think that becoming an entrepreneur and working for yourself is a really rigorous process, and I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think it's something that everybody should. Everybody thinks, oh, working for myself. I tell you, yourself is going to be the hardest person you ever had to work for. It's very demanding. It's very stressful. I don't know how many years it took off my life. I went for 13 years only getting paid half the time with 0 savings in my bank account, having nightmares about bankruptcy. I mean, it was not fun. And the only thing that really kept me going, Kevin, was that I loved the idea. I was so fascinated with the whole concept of divination software and the whole concept of multimedia and the fact that I could use multimedia, which was a really new thing. In fact, CD-ROMs didn't come around until like 93 or 94. And before then, multimedia, you had like 5 floppy disks that you had to enter into the computer. I mean, it was pretty primitive. And so, but I had visions of multimedia back in the 70s when I thought, wow, I'm playing this game on the computer. People use this for education or for spiritual stuff.
Yeah. Well, look how much things have changed. I mean, we're being all fuddy-dudders here, but we're not really, because look, in our, even in my short lifetime, just to be able to do an interview. I mean, I've, to be able to broadcast myself and have the ability not to have a production company working for them and to do it myself with a platform called YouTube, which is direct to the consumer.
Exactly.
Things have just changed so much, technology-wise, and. Yeah, I mean,
and it's very resourceful of you to learn how to do that and to put the pieces together in a unique way, and you're creating a unique product and service for people.
Yeah, I want more. My last name's Moore. I want much more than this, and I'm content. But I want to. I think I'm going to go for a network, something called the ISNN.com, the International Spiritual News Network.
I see.
And doing the news from a spiritual perspective, and also having shows on there, other people's shows, including my show as well. How I'm going to do all that, I don't know. I'll just have to maybe get into cloning first of all, but. It's going to happen. I do believe this thing wants to be born. Sometimes you can feel something wants to be born, can't
That's
you?
right.
You can. It's almost like it's inevitable. It's almost like it's something in your life path with free will that you've got the choice to do. But something pulls you to do it. And sometimes you even think to yourself when doing this, yes, we can love what we do, but it's insanity to do it sometimes, isn't it, really? Why go through all this pain just to not work for someone else? Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
What are we doing? Right? But at the same time, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
Take the risks that grow you. It's growing you because it's coming from your heart, because it's an emanation of who you are. You want to do it because it's what you're good at.
Yeah, and there's lots I can say to that. Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate, obviously, you giving us your time right now. I know we've got to end this because we're kind of over time here a little bit, almost getting there. And I don't want to, take too much of your time up. But I have found this to be a fascinating interview. I think your work is very deep, and we can go deeper with your work one day. And maybe a face-to-face interview might be the way to do that, rather than by, technology where it's a different interview in person, different energy exchange, most definitely. But and again, just reiterate to us, your website is.
The website is divination.com. That's DIVI nation.com. And there you can get a link to the book. The book is Intuitive Intelligence. It has its own website, intuitiveintelligence.org. But it doesn't matter because there's a link from divination.com. And on divination.com, you can see all the other work that we do, including my podcast, etc. And the book is for sale, like you said, at Amazon, but also at Barnes & Noble and all kinds of bookstores, and it's published by Beyond Words, and it's doing pretty well. It just came out around a month ago, from the date of this taping. It's exciting. It feels really good, and I think it just feels really good to be giving back and to helping people. All the proceeds for the book go to the nonprofit work that we do. We also have an app for the I Ching called the Visionary I Ching app. And this is for people who want to have an easy way to access divination when they need it the most, or just use it every morning as a kind of a meditation. It's got great reviews, and it's available for iPhone or Android. So all the things that we do are at divination.com, and including a way to contact me through our contact form there. And I want to tell you, Kevin, I really appreciate the Moore Show, and I really appreciate you and what you're doing. And it's been really a pleasure being with you today.
I appreciate you giving us your time and working with me to do this interview. I know you thank you for doing that, and you're a busy guy as well. Thank you, and I look forward to crossing paths in the not too distant future.
Me too. Take care. Bye.